Of course, for human beings, it's very difficult to conceive, to understand what resurrection really means. Because, of course, what we see in our physical reality is a dead body, is the decomposition of a body through earth or through fire, and the human person seems to be gone. So how can we at the same time deal with that irrationality of resurrection, and at the same time trying to understand it, trying to come to understanding of faith? We call this in the tradition fides quaerens intellectum. And for centuries, Christians have tried to imagine the unimaginable, but at the same time they have always been aware also of the limits of our knowledge. And negative theology warns us about this problem. Negative theology makes clear what we cannot say about God. Where are our limits to say something, in this case, about resurrection? Think about Jesus' movies. It's very easy to show the crucifixion and all its details. And you see that movie makers have much more problems in trying to conceive, to present resurrection. Because if you look to the gospel stories themselves, you see that resurrection is presented by women who discover an empty tomb. Christianity starts with an empty tomb, with the absence of Christ. And of course, the empty tomb can be seen as a kind of proof for resurrection. But not per se. There are authors saying that perhaps the body has been removed, or the body has been stolen, or the women are at the wrong tomb. So we are not giving a historical evidence. Others are saying there is historical evidence, given the fact that women in that time were not recognized as testimonies, as witnesses that you could trust. It's very remarkable that the gospel writers choose women as the first to witness about the resurrection of Christ, given the fact that it must be historical, because if they would have imagined it, they would have chosen men, at least in that culture and in that time. So we try to understand, but we are each time also confronted with our limits. If Jesus appears to Maria Magdalene, he is saying to her, "Noli me tangere," do not touch me. We cannot touch, we cannot possess the risen Christ. He is always also at the other side. When the disciples move from Jerusalem to Emmaus, and certainly they recognize the risen Christ and the breaking of the bread, at that moment the gospel tells us Jesus disappears. They cannot take him further with them. So that's the idea of negative theology. So even if there is no doubt that this is the cornerstone of Christianity, it's very difficult to imagine the unimaginable. And each time in the Bible we see this, that God, if he reveals himself, he also creates distance. Moses cannot touch the fire. You cannot look behind your back to the burning of the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. You're not allowed to see it, or you turn into a pillar of salt. God remains also always different. And resurrection will always also be, in that case, a mystery. That's why St. Paul is saying that today we only look in a dimmed mirror, and only at the end of time we will be able to face God face to face directly. So that's the warning that is presented in negative theology.